Ho, ho, ho. Welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I know it's April, but we have the Santa Con. Today's episode is the Santa Con. This is from 2014, and it's an hour and 28 minutes long. It's a Christmas movie, technically. No, it's not technically. It really is. It really is. But it's really just a framework for a guy who makes an awful lot of really bad decisions and then is inspired to make even more often bad looking decisions to get out of it, to get out of all the mess he made. And by the way, if you think this is a movie that stars Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Urkel, yes, that's them, Melissa Joan Hart and Julia White. If you think this movie stars them, you are wrong, because this movie does not star them. They are in the film. They they're supporting actors in this, but they are not the leads. They are in a half dozen, maybe 10 scenes at most, but they're kind of the ones who help out the main characters, but mainly the main character, played by Barry Watson. He plays Nick DeMarco, and Barry Watson is a con man who is also an ex-con. As of the first 5 minutes of the film, we first meet him in prison, just as he's getting out, and he's now thrown back into a normal life in the care of his sister, played by Melissa Joan Hart, and doesn't have a job. He can't really take care of himself for the most part. He knows how to con people, and there's still suspicion that the only reason he got out of prison early, on a recommendation from the warden, played by John Ratzenberger, yes, Cliff from Cheers, and a voice in nearly every Pixar film. The only reason he got out was because he conned the warden. Is that the case? Don't know. Either way, do we see the warden again at some point in the film? Yes. They have to have that framework, but I'll get to that in a minute. But this is really about Nick he has to get a job. So his sister works in a mall, I guess, a department store, and she serves coffee, and it's right next to the Santa station, and she gets him a job as a Santa. He's miserable. He's ready to go to the track. He's very selfish. He's just sort of thinking about himself, trying to make the next hookup and make sure he can get money back, flowing back in his pocket. Not paying attention to his job. He's on his 500th kid of the day on his lap, telling him what he wants for Christmas. And this curly-haired little blonde kid shows up and says, "I want my mom and dad to get back together by Christmas." And he's like, yeah, kid. Okay, sure, whatever. That sounds like great. I can do that, sure. He's just looking at the clock. He's just not even paying attention. Of course. Mom doesn't hear him make that promise. But his sister quickly finds out, and it's not good. So he kind of gets kicked out, and he has to go. I'm not telling you everything. I'm just not going to spoil everything in this movie, but I got to talk about some of the things so you at least understand where this thing is going and the other comments that I'm going to say about this. He ends up sort of kicked out for just really potentially messing up this little boy's life, because he's not going to be able to get his parents back together. Santa lied to him, and that's going to ruin that kid. He's 7. His name's Billy, and he's just his mom. We get to meet her a little earlier than this scene. We realize that she and her husband are recently separated after just a few months. She is played by Melissa Sagemiller. Her name's Carol, and her husband you might recognize him from The Orville. His name's Scott Grimes, and he plays John Guthrie. And, John's a bit of an alcoholic. Does he have reasons? Sure. But it still doesn't necessarily make up for the fact that he has a serious problem, and he's sort of took it out on his wife and kid. He didn't hit them or anything, but he got really out of control one time, and she kicked him out of the house, and they haven't. She's pretty much working on making it permanent. Little boy, Billy, can handle this. So that's the lead up to him showing up at the mall to talk to Santa. Well, Nick, without a home now, just carrying the stuff, like a bag full of his stuff that he took back from him from prison, is walking down the street. It gets really rainy, and he walks into a church. He meets a woman who's a pastor, played by Wendy Williams. Yeah. This is a Hallmark movie. I realize, yes, this is a Hallmark movie without the Hallmark. It's got all the hallmarks of one. She's, oh, crap. I just realized what cliche she is. Those of you who know what I'm talking about are already saying it out loud. You know how some films or TV shows tend to have the magical black man or black woman? In this case, well, guess what? But is this film have any Christmas magic in it? Technically, you don't know that. It doesn't present itself, obviously, at least at first. Is there a bit of Christmas magic, a big twist? Yes, I'll tell you that much. But you'll see it coming a mile away once it hits. Anyway, she gives Nick a little bit of inspiration, tells him he needs to get that little boy's parents together. He's like, what are you talking about? How am I supposed to do that? You're going to have to get that should have been the first tip-off, by the way. That he's been given the mission of trying to use his talents of being a con man to get parents together. And this involves this pretending to be a contractor to help build an addition under her home, where other people she hired are not really doing the job well or at all, but squeezing her for money regardless. And he's also got to kind of insert himself into the life of John, who spends most of his time at the bar and breaking into his old job in the middle of a meeting and making wild accusations against a coworker as to the reason why he lost his job. Are they founded? Well, you'll have to watch the film to find out. But this waffles a lot. There's tonally, the film is not necessarily really consistent. Sometimes it's really dramatic, and other times it's funny. It is actually funny. One of the things that I find they had the problem with is the dramatic dialogue. Some of it is just really a little cheese-tastic, just a little cheese-tastic. It's some of it's a little forced. Some of the people, I think the actors realize this is a little tough to swallow. But on the flip side of it, the interaction, the comedy, while not entirely like, it's not, oh my God, that's so funny kind of comedy, like you're just going to double over laughing. There is the delivery between the actors is actually really good, because a lot of them have spent their lives in sitcoms growing up. Melissa Joan Hart, Julia White, but others, I mean, it's just, between Barry Watson, I'm trying to figure out, was he in Seventh Heaven? Yeah, something like that. But either way, they're used to, a lot of these people have grown up in television and know the science of the patter, and they know how to throw lines back and forth. And some of the lines are actually really good. The comedy works. It's not a raucous comedy kind of thing. It's not for the jokes, but the jokes that are delivered in the lines actually work out. They hit. So I know you don't necessarily expect it. It doesn't have the same tone as you would expect the comedy to be in, say, a Hallmark Christmas film or most other Christmas films, because there has to be a certain level of innocence and a certain level of lack of irony in any comedy that involves those films usually, because they're a little bit too earnest. In this, there's just some pretty decent back and forth. That's all I can say. Comedy-wise, these people get it right. They do a really good job. But beyond that, is this thing completely original? And does it move into some really just iffy territory? Yeah, it's kind of like he's a con man. He has to insinuate himself into the lives of a number of different people. It's not Quantum Leap. This is not like Sent by an Angel or whatever it was, Michael Landon, or whatever that was. But he's got no special powers except for his con abilities, and that does lead to some comedic bits where he is pretending to be a contractor and he doesn't know how to do anything. He has to watch YouTube videos on how to hammer in nails. That's how unqualified he is for this job. And somehow even though he's asked her not to watch, he puts up a protective plastic shield. How she doesn't hear him listening to these instruction videos done by a drunk Bosner, I have no idea, because she's on the other side of the tarp, just working, because she's a web designer and she works at home most of the time. So that allows them to spend a lot of time together and interact. And it's like she's not leaving Nick at home with her son and a babysitter while she's at the office. She works from home. So her and Nick interact. Carol and Nick interact. Oh, Carol, is that intentional for a Christmas thing? I don't know. And Billy has to learn how to play piano, and well, Nick really starts to become close to this family. But his job is also to get them to the very lovely, beautiful young woman back together with her husband. And does he do that? Especially when it becomes really obvious, really easy. He might make a pretty good dad to Billy and a husband to Carol. And every once in a while, we cut back to whenever he goes home, and he's like, oh, there's Melissa Joan Hart. Oh, let me bring home about my other ex-con friend who just also got out of jail, Jaleel White, who plays, what's his character's name? Paul comes home. Oh, by the way, she's single. And she's like, I don't want, you see where this is going. So, this is a Lifetime movie. I just realized this now. The logo that's on the thumbnail here, this is a Lifetime Christmas movie. So that's almost on the level of Hallmark films when it comes to that level of contrived holiday spirit. So yeah. So you get that kind of thing where you're like, oh, you're rooting for him to get the couple together, but should you also be rooting for him to get together with the mom? And like I said, tonally, it swings wide between funny moments and dealing with alcoholism, like some pretty serious things that you can't. There are humorous moments that involve John's alcoholism. Scott Grimes is pretty good at just playing the drunk. He has a good comedic feel for that kind of character. But he's done comedy. It's the Orville. So and drama. It's the Orville. But he's it's a 2014. So no Orville yet that I think. Anyway, they get a lot of comedy out of his drunkenness to a certain degree, but then you realize it is a serious thing they're dealing with. Are they setting him up to fail? Like, he gets into a number of drunken sequences that shame and embarrass his wife and child. And it's nothing to laugh at. It's actually something really serious. Now, you watch it and you're like, oh my gosh, they are setting him up to be the bad guy in this, and that he will just go away, and then Nick will get to be the hero, and he'll get the girl, and he'll get the child, and he'll have everything he ever wanted that he can never have because of his life in prison. And is this relationship meant to be the consolation prize if that doesn't happen? So it's all over. It doesn't necessarily seem like an obvious which way is it going to go at the start. At least to me, it wasn't. Like, I wasn't sure which way they were going, and I wonder if they almost wrote themselves into a corner on this, and they were like, you know what? I'm not really sure which way we should go. Let's talk to a committee and like decide. I don't know if that's ever happened, but with this film, but it seemed very like down to the line. Like, which direction are they going to go with this? So that was a surprising bit for me. I was actually kind of surprised that I was surprised. So, can I say I recommend it? Yeah, to a degree. It's April. I'm not really ready for Christmas movies yet. Maybe I'd be more in the spirit of this is December. And if this had not been picked, this would have been on my December Christmas run next year. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's up to you. If you're really into like the Hallmark, Lifetime, even Disney Christmas movies, yeah, you're gonna want to watch this. And especially if you grew up with these two, just don't expect them to be the main characters. All right, just you have to deal with that right now. It's done well enough. Like I said, it's funny enough. It takes its dramatic stuff seriously, but it's that. While I liked being surprised, I also don't know if I feel right. Like it seemed like a pat resolution, although I realize that there's still some things that still need to be worked out one way or another, whichever way this story goes, whichever man she chooses. She goes with the new hunky not contractor guy. Oh, and does he ever, like, there's a revelation at some point in films like this where somebody is conning somebody. What about that moment when somebody's got it? When you lie to somebody, the revelation of the lie is required in the story. And I'll spoil this much, not the whole thing. That isn't really done to its fullest for everyone. That's all I'm going to say about that. So it kind of left me hanging in a sense, where usually that drama hits the second act or end of the second act, and then the third act is that person scrambling to get it all set up right. So this definitely moves away from the standard structure of these things, which is good, but it's still, I'm not sure how I feel about them actually breaking that mold. I don't know. You'll have to see it yourself. So I'm going to say, yeah, check it out. If you want to see a film that is clearly false advertising, and as it stars, I mean, yeah, they're the most famous people at the time in this film, but I don't know. I don't know why this doesn't tell me that this would have been something that could have put these guys in the main thing. If this was a Hallmark film, I think they would have been the main characters. I don't know. We'll see. But either way, it's, it could be, your life's not going to be changed by this film, and it's not going to be the greatest film you've ever seen, or certainly not the greatest Christmas film you've ever seen, but you might be entertained by it, which I can't usually say for a lot of these things. So I say check it out probably around Christmas, if it's still on here. Let's pick tomorrow's episode.
196.
196. Gotta hear it. It's just a thing. 196. Oh, crap. I don't know what this is. Oh. Okay, this is somewhat new. But I'm sorry, we're moving back into the documentary realm again. But like I said a couple days ago, all the last week's worth of documentaries, every single one of them has been very different from the last one. We didn't get like two shark ones or two mummy ones or two African elephant ones like back to back. And there are a lot of those. So we had a big, I don't know, we got a lot of diversity in our documentaries. And this one, I'm not really sure. It is 196, right? I gotta make, yep, 196. Okay, we'll check this out. It is called Heroes of the Long Road Home with Martha Raddatz. I cannot wait to put that on the thumbnail. Heroes of the Long Road Home with Martha Raddatz. That's what we're watching next tomorrow on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that. Ho, ho, ho. Merry April.